All right, we're going to get started. How many of you guys have ever done any real studies on the book of Numbers? Numbers. It's at the very front of the book. It's near the front. I mean, nobody ever done any studies on the book of Numbers? Some. What do you know? What does anybody know about the book of Numbers? What's in the book of Numbers? And I'll give you a hint. It's not numbers. It's not a bunch of numbers. It's kind of interesting. I guess if unless you read it and start thinking about it, you think of the book of Genesis as everything's beginning and how it all starts mushrooming out. And the book of Exodus, what's the book of Exodus about? Leaving Egypt. And then Leviticus, I didn't think about it, but the book of Leviticus and Numbers is basically we left in Exodus, but then you got two whole books of actually going somewhere. And it takes two whole books to actually get anywhere. So the book of Numbers is basically following along their trail, getting out. They've come out of Egypt. And now this is the trials and tribulations and perils and everything that the people of Israel encountered on their way to the promised land. So I thought it was a little interesting. I actually Googled interesting stories of the Bible. I was trying to think of something to do, and it kind of, not I won't say necessarily obscure stories, but different stories instead of just what we normally do. I told y'all last time that I was going to finish up Samson, but it just didn't quite come together. Samson, I could only come up with another 15, 20 minutes of Samson, so I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. So this kind of came, when I read this, it kind of came over me. I was like, this seems kind of interesting, so I think I'm going to go with this. So we're moving into, we're not starting at the front of Numbers, but kind of half on near the end, where the people of Israel are still trying to find their way to the promised land, and we're going to pick up and we're going to talk about a prophet by the name of Balaam. And I have no idea if I pronounced that right, but I'm going to call him Balaam. So if somebody else says it's a different name, they're probably right, but I'm going to call him Balaam. Anybody ever heard of the prophet Balaam? 3 people. Well, there's a saying of Balaam's error, and it's a mistake that Balaam made. And it's an interesting story about what happens to him. But I call Balaam a prophet. And I've read some other various things about him that call him the prophet Balaam. What do you think of when I say someone is a prophet? What does that mean to you? I'm going to ask questions, so get ready to answer. Get ready to respond. What? Foretell. Foretell? What else? What's a prophet? A messenger. That's a good word. What else? From God. Well, a prophet can be from. You can be from somebody else. You can be a prophet and be from someone other than God. You would think that if we refer to somebody in the Bible as a prophet, that he would come directly from God. But a prophet, messenger, foreteller, those are exactly right. One who, and what I came up with was one who seeks the will of the person he's following, and then lets it be known. So a prophet, you would think is someone who's seeking after, in the Bible terms, a prophet, one who seeks after the will of God, and then relays it as a messenger would, to the people of God. So we call this guy a prophet, but we're going to see maybe not so much. I think he was okay, but I don't think at the beginning, I don't think he really was a very good prophet for God. But we'll see that he can still be used. All right. A little background. I'll try to make it's a little bit not too brief, but I want to give you a background and let you know kind of where we are and why we're going to get to where we're at. Like I said, people of Israel have left Egypt, and they have moved toward the land of Canaan, the promised land that God has given them, land of flowing with milk and honey, and they're on their way. And they get basically within spitting distance of that land. And then they get lost. How in the world can you get lost when you can see where you're headed? Ever happened to any of y'all? You know where you're at. Huh?
Some doors are hard to find.
You know where you're at. You know where you're supposed to go, but you're having a hard time getting there. Ever happened to anybody? Anybody wearing a blue shirt? Anybody? Best one happened to, I know me and Dad happened to us one time fishing, trying to leave and go home, and we knew which way the truck was. It was that way. But then it started thundering and lightning and raining. And the third time we passed that bucket hanging in the tree, I was like, we ain't going in the right direction. There's a bucket hanging in the tree, and the third time I saw it, it's like, this ain't right. So we knew where to go, and we knew what direction we were supposed to go. We knew where the destination was, but we couldn't get there. We were having a lot of trouble getting to where we wanted to be. Well, apparently the people of Israel were having the same problem. They got, I don't know, have you ever seen the landscape over in this part of the world where they're at? Not a lot of trees. It's kind of flat, desert looking. So how in the world did they get where they could see the promised land and then get lost for 40 years? How did that happen? There's like 4 million of them. Not one person said, wait a minute, that way. Why is everybody going this way? The promised land is back that way. Why are y'all going this way? Out of 4 million people, nobody can see the right direction. How did that happen? Huh? Attitude. God did it. God is the only person in the world that can turn the eyes of 4 million people and cause that many people to go in the wrong direction and cause them to be lost for 40 years. So here they are. So they got there, and then the whole group just kind of turned and went back the other way. So then they went around the mountain and got lost. So then they wandered for 40 years. So, until what happened? I think I read it was a 2 or 3 that made it. But basically, they wandered until that generation of people who were disobedient to God died out. Once they started dying out and God got them out of the way, then He let their children find their way back. So now, these people have died out. The older generation is gone. So God is allowing them now to go back and find the promised land. So now they're back on track. They woke up. One of them woke up one morning and said, hey, I found a compass. I know which way it is. So now they're headed back in the right direction. They're headed back toward Israel. But in order to get there, however they got themselves positioned here, land of Canaan's over here, there's a bunch of countries or kingdoms in their way between them and their destination. So they said, okay, well, we got to go. Apparently there must have been a valley, must have been mountains. They said, that's the only way we can go. We can't go around them. We got 4 million people walking. We can't go around the mountain again. We're going through them. So the first kingdom they came up to was a kingdom called Arad. Or Arad, again, don't hold the pronunciation against me. They come up to Arad, and they said, we got to go through there. Well, the king of Arad sees them coming. He says, I'm going to do a little preemptive strike on them. He goes out and attacks them, captures a whole bunch of them, brings them back, and says, now what you going to do? Well, Israel said, well, you got like 20,000 people. We got 4 million. He just pretty much wiped them out. They just came in and took their people back and wiped out the kingdom of Arad. So they wiped them out and kept right on moving. So then they move up to this country called Shinar. And then they try to do the right thing. Like, okay, we wiped out the last country. You guys, they sent messengers to the king and said, look, we need to go through your country. Please let us through. Well, this king says no. He says, you're not coming through my country, even if you ask. So he attacked them again. So Israel wiped them out. So now they're gone. They go through 2 more. What were their names? Jazer and Bashan. They moved through them as well. Wiped them out. So these people, you're like, at some point I looked up and said, maybe just let them through. Just let's let them go. They don't want. Yeah, it makes sense to me. They've wiped out 3 kingdoms. Let's just kind of let them ease on through. So lastly, they have coming up to the country of Moab. And Moab is the only thing that stands between them and the land of Canaan. So Moab's kind of like one guy called it, it's the jumping off point. Kind of like, the military, we have bases all over the world. Like in World War II, I saw a documentary a while back on the Philippines in World War II and how important that little island was to both sides, because it was strategically located that whoever had control of it, it was a jumping off point to attack the other one. So that was why it was one of the most hotly contested and bloodiest battles of World War II, is because Japan and the United States both wanted those islands really, really bad. So Moab was basically a jumping off point for the Israelites to be able to settle in, get close, form their attack plan, and go into Canaan. So they were going to go through there. Well, Moab was ruled by this guy named Balak. Well, Balak had been watching all that's been going on. He's been seeing what's happening. He's going to see them. They done moved through these 4 or 5 kingdoms, wiped them all out. So he's kind of like, I'm kind of afraid of what's coming. He's like, this don't look good for us. So he's like, I got to do something. Which, there's a side note to this. The country of Moab, the Moabites, if I'm saying that correctly, were actually descendants of Lot. When Abraham and Lot split back in Genesis, when Lot's people became the Moabites. So they basically were cousins to the Israelites. They were kind of the same tree line. And it says actually in the Bible that God told the Israelites, don't mess with the Moabites. Don't injure them. Don't mess with them. Don't hurt them, because they're kind of your kin. Well, obviously the king of Moab didn't know that. So he says, I got to do something to protect myself, protect my kingdom, do something to get these people not to come through my country and defeat them. But he's looking at him saying, I don't think I have the manpower or the artillery. I don't have what it takes to beat them on my own. So he says, let's call in some reinforcements. And his reinforcements come in the form of Balaam. Now, Balaam at the time was, like you said, I guess you could call him a prophet. He was actually what the Bible refers to him as a diviner, which I didn't really look up the word of diviner. What's the word diviner mean, George? It's like the divining rod. Yeah, that's where the word divining rod comes from. You know where water is. A diviner is someone who's kind of what you would call a seer, someone who palm reader. That's kind of where that name comes from. That word comes from is people who seem to know things and seem to be able to do things that are not necessarily spiritual, but seem to defy logic. So this guy had a reputation of being the most powerful diviner that there was in this time. So the king of Moab says, I need help. So he sends a group of his princes over to see this guy Balaam to say, hey, we need your help. So what is he wanting to do? Well, this is where we start tonight as far as reading the Bible. We're going to go into the chapter 22, the book of Numbers. Starting in verse 1, it says, Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, This horde is going to lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was the king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pethor near the river in his native land. And Balak said, A people has come out of Egypt. They covered the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps I can defeat them. Perhaps I'll be able to drive them out. I know that if you come, that who you bless will be blessed, and who you curse will be cursed. So Balak sent these people. He sent his princes and money and jewels and all this stuff, and sent them out to kind of buy this guy. He's kind of like he was kind of like a hitman of the time. So he sends his people out to get Balaam, to bring him back, just so that he can put a curse on the people of Israel, so that he now would have what he thinks is a fighting chance against them. So he's like sending all his people and says, come back, put a curse on Israel, and give me a fighting chance. So they truly believed that if he came back and cursed them, they would have this opportunity. So moving on, chapter verse 7 says, the elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for the divination. And when they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said. He said, spend the night here, and I will bring you back an answer the Lord gives me. So the Moabite princes stayed with Balaam. Well, God comes to Balaam in the night and says, who are these men with you? Do you really think God needed Balaam to tell him who these men were? So why did he ask? See what he tell him. How many of you have children? Have you ever? I think I've been asked this question. What you doing? Nothing. I know better. What you been doing? Yeah, how many of you ever either said those words or heard those words? Why you ask that question? They want to see what you say, whether you're going to say the truth or not. Because Mama already knows what you've been doing. She just wants to see how you're going to answer. So God asked the question, who are these men? He already knew who they were. He just wanted to see what Balaam was going to say. See what kind of answer he was going to give him. So it's these things kind of move down through history. So moving on to verse 11. Balaam, starting in verse 10, Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent these people. He said, and he's told me a people has come out of Egypt that covers the face of the land and wants me to come and put a curse on them for him. Perhaps then he will be able to fight them and drive them away. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on these people because they are blessed. The next morning Balaam got up and said to Balak's princes, go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. God told him not to go. But I think God at this point has become a little perturbed with Balaam, because what did Balaam do? Instead of, if Balaam was a prophet of God, if Balaam was a follower of God, as soon as these people came to him and said, we want you to come back with us and put a curse on these people of Israel, what should have been his response? Heck no, I ain't going. He said, I know what God's thinking. You're not cursing my people. So Balaam should have said no to start with, but what did he do? He said, y'all hang out, spend the night, rest up, eat some food. I'll go ask God and see what he says. Well, if he had told them to leave at once, if he said, you got to go, I know what God's going to say. I already know God's will. I know what God's going to say. Y'all got to go ahead and go because I ain't going. But he let them stay. He let them spend the night. He let them hang out with them. Kind of like we do sometimes. How many of us, when we have the opportunity to either do something definite, we know what God's going to say. We know what our parents are going to say. We know what the right thing to do is, but we say, let me let this situation just hang around for a little while. Just see how it works out. I'm sure it's going to work out the way God wants it to, and what His will is. But I'm going to let it sit here for a little while, just to make sure, because God may change His mind. How many times does God do that? What the answer was he was kind of hoping. He knew what God was going to say, but he was kind of in the back of his mind hoping that God would say, you know what, that's not such a bad idea. Why don't you go ahead and just take the money and go ahead and do that? I'm okay with that. He's kind of, somewhere in the back of his mind, he's hoping that God's going to change his mind and say that, but I don't think that's going to happen. So God comes to him, he says, who are these guys? And he tells him, he said, send them home. You're not cursing my people. It ain't going to happen. So send them home. Tell them you're not interested. Don't care how good a salesman they are. This car is out of your price range. You don't need to be talking to them. So he gets up. He tells them to go home. So they go home. They tell Balak, look, he's not interested. Well, Balak, being the good salesman that he is, doesn't exactly take no for an answer. So, starting in verse 14, it says, So the Moabite princes returned to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come. He didn't say no, he refused. So Balak sends other princes, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said, This is what Balak the son of Zippor says. Do not let anything keep you from coming, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me. But Balaam answered them, Even if Balak gave me his palace filled with silver and gold, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now stay here tonight as the others did, and I will find out what else the Lord will tell me. Really? Balaam says, even if he gave me everything he owns, there's no way I'm going with you guys. It ain't going to happen. It's not possible. Scratch it off your book. But go ahead and hang out with me a little while longer. And let me go talk to God again, just to make sure. Just want to be 100% sure that that's what God wants me to do. It's like, really? I don't think so. God has already said no. I mean, a true follower of God, someone who's following after God's will, how many times would you expect God to say, I've changed my mind? That thing you wanted to do, okay, it's not so. I don't think, upon further reflection, maybe it ain't quite so bad. Go ahead and do it. Why? Why do you think? But then God says, in verse 20, he says, That night God came to Balaam and said, Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you. Why do you think God changed his mind? Why do you think God said, okay? What? See what he would do. Teach him a lesson. It was a long part of the study I did on look at this. It kind of went real deep on this, but I didn't want to go quite that deep. But what I got out of it was that God, I think, reached a point, kind of like we do sometimes, where they just wear you down. Where your kids or somebody just wears you down with the questions. You finally say, look, go ahead. That's what you want to do? Go ahead. Go ahead and do it, and let's see what happens. So I think at this point, God is saying, look, I've told you no. I said no, and you keep asking? He said, even you said that you don't have enough gold, you don't have enough treasures, you don't have enough to get me, but you can still hang around a little while longer, and I'll go ask again. What part of that are you saying it might change? It's not going to change. I'm still saying no, but God's he's getting a little agitated now, so he's like, all right, just go. Go ahead and go with them. Get up on your horse, get on your donkey, whatever, and go with them. So Balaam's like, okay. He didn't say, maybe this is a bad idea. Why did he say I could go? That's what I would be doing. It's like, I'd be like, I say, start second guessing. Why did God all of a sudden say okay? Start saying there's a trap. That's what it would be for me. You'd be lying a trap for me, waiting for me. Well, basically God does. He kind of lays a trap for him. But there's other examples in the Bible of where God allows things to happen, allows people that seem to be his people do things that eventually will further his will. Example, Judas Iscariot. He was a disciple. He was, of all the people in that time, he was one of the 12 who was devoted to following Jesus. But he was the one who betrayed him. And God allowed that to happen. Why? For his will to be carried out, for the greater things that could happen, God sometimes allows things bad to happen. Allows people to go against him, to do things that they know are wrong. God allows things to happen sometimes for the greater good. As parents, sometimes we do that. We get fed up with kids or people, and we say, all right, you want to try it? Go ahead. I know you're going to fail, but maybe this will be a lesson to teach you what you're doing is wrong. So sometimes we even allow people to do things we know are wrong and know are going to turn out bad just because we know there might be a lesson in this. So he lets him go. He says, get on your donkey, go with him. But God still wasn't real happy about it. So we're about to see, starting in verse 22, it says, but God was very angry when he did leave. He said, go ahead and go. He said, go ahead and go. But when he did, then God was still kind of mad about it. So God's still angry. So the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. And Balaam was riding on his donkey and his 2 servants with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road into a field. And Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in the narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the right or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, I skipped one. Sorry. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between 2 vineyards with walls on both sides. And when the donkey saw the angel, she pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it, so he beat her again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn left or to the right. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she laid down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat her again with his staff. So God sends this angel to jump down in front of Balaam and his donkey. The donkey sees the angel, Balaam does not. So he has no idea why the donkey keeps stopping and wanting to go this way and wanting to go that way. And then the donkey goes through the wall and crushes the man's foot. So he's getting a little perturbed this time, and he don't understand it. The donkey goes off into the field. Balaam jumps off of him, runs in front of him with the stick, and starts whooping him. Get the donkey to go back the right way. Then the angel jumps in front of him again, catches Balaam's foot, crushes it. So the angel gets in a narrow spot where there's nowhere to go. So the donkey sees that, so the donkey just lays down, and in our terminology, sulls. She done sold up. She ain't going nowhere. So Balaam jumps down again, runs in front, and commences again to whoop it on the donkey. So now that he's done whoop this donkey 3 or 4 times, then, I don't know about y'all, but this image, when I read it, seemed vaguely familiar to me. Seems like I've seen this somewhere before. I've seen things like this. You ever seen anything like this happen? An animal? Any of you grow up on a farm with contrary animals? Is there anything more aggravating than a contrary animal? What, Gloria? You ever been around contrary animals? Sam, did you ever grow up around contrary animals? Sometimes you get a hold of contrary animals, you lose your cool. Balaam has lost his cool. He has lost it. And he's whooping on this animal, trying to get it to go back to where he wants it to go. So I think if all of us are honest, we've either been that person or we've been with somebody who did kind of the same thing. Because at some point with a dumb animal, you finally lose your cool with them sometimes because they won't go where you think they should go. Well,
but I ain't never had one tell me that.
No, you hadn't.
I'd have been leaving.
No, I kind of came to the conclusion that there must have been a lot of angels around me when I was growing up, jumping in front of cows, because the cows never went where they're supposed to go. So it had to be. I feel blessed because I obviously had angels around me all the time, because they were always making the cows go in the wrong direction. So he's down there. So he's whooping on this donkey. But how many times have you been messing with an animal and the animal turns around and starts talking to you. Well, this animal did. In verse 28, then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth and said to Balaam, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Balaam answered the donkey, "You have made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand right now, I would kill you right now." How many of you felt that way before? If I could get my hands on a stick or a gun, that'd be the end of you. Right here, right now. So Balaam, I'm like John. The donkey turns around and starts talking. And this is not Mr. Ed from the old TV show. This is a donkey that turns around and starts talking. Instead of freaking out and running away, he starts talking back to the donkey. They're having a conversation, sitting right there. "Why are you beating me?" "I don't know, because you wouldn't do what I told you. You made a fool out of me. So yeah, I'm going to keep beating you." So here we are. This is the diviner. This is the what they considered the most powerful guy in the world they knew of. This is the guy they went to get. They traveled. It was a 25-day trip in one direction to get this guy. They're bringing him back. They got all the top dignitaries of the country, all the princes, this is their A team. They sent the B team. They couldn't get him. They sent the A team. They're bringing him back. And all these people are standing around watching this guy running in circles with his donkey, beating the donkey, then having an argument with the donkey. And you know they had to be sitting around looking at each other going, "This is the guy? This is who the king sent us after? This guy?" I can't help but think, I kind of feel the same way right now watching our political system play out. It's like, this is who we got? Y'all sent me after him? Yeah, this is the guy. So all them sitting around, this is thinking, this is the guy the king wants us to bring back. He's the one who's going to deliver us from the people of Israel and allow us to help defeat him. You know, their confidence in him can't be all that high at this moment. Thinking like, I don't know about this guy. He doesn't seem all that great to us.
It's one thing for the donkey to do all of that, but then it's another thing for him to start talking and then the fellow answers back.
That's what.
Now, that would be embarrassing.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. He didn't freak out. He just keeps talking. They're like, okay, this guy may be a little Looney Tunes. He's talking to the animals. Now, whether they could hear the animal talk or not, I don't know. But he's a little Looney Tune. He's sitting there talking to the animal. He's just been beaten, and he's laying there in the dirt. This guy is a few French fries shy of the Happy Meal. So we move on. So the donkey says, "Am I not your donkey, the one you have always ridden? To this day have I ever been in the habit of doing this to you?" He's like, "No, I guess not." So then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord says to him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If she had not, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared the donkey." Donkey was doing what it was supposed to do. It saw the angel, it stopped. Balaam didn't do what he was supposed to do. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was trying God's patience. He was trying to see what he could get away with. So the angel says, "Look, if that donkey hadn't stopped, you wouldn't be standing here talking. We wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be laying on the ground." But the donkey was smart enough to stop. So at this point, God finally uses the donkey and the angel to open Balaam's eyes, to let him see exactly what was going on. So this guy, this important guy, this diviner, most powerful guy in the world at this time, finds out that his life has been saved by a donkey that he's been beating mercilessly for the past 30 minutes. Finds out this is where I'm at. I've been dropped down to basically my life's been saved by a stupid donkey because the donkey was smart enough to know the will of God. I'm not. So, had to completely mess with his ego. Because, sometimes we're sometimes kind of the same way. We get a little full of ourselves sometimes thinking, I got this. I'm in control. My life's going well. I got everything under control. But at the same time, when we forget to consult God and follow God, listen to God, sometimes we can find ourselves humbled a little bit too. Find out we're not quite as smart as we might have thought we were. So, the story of Balaam, he winds up having his eyes open and finding out that he really needed to be following the will of God. But he was hedging his bets. He was, this is how we are. He hedged his bets. He said, he was living his life promoting himself as the prophet of God. Because every time those guys came and talked to him, he said, well, I might go, but let me see what the will of God is. Let me ask God and find out what I'm supposed to do. So he'd leave them in there while he'd go and talk to God and find out what the truth was. Well, those guys think, well, he's in there talking to God. That was just mainly, at that point, it was a show. Because the whole time, he's thinking, maybe God let me go so I can get a hold of all that money. Maybe I'm supposed to get all the riches, and I'm supposed to go with these guys, and somewhere along the line, they'll think I'm a prophet of God, and I'll show that, and I'll show them how great I am, and I'll get paid at the end. All will be good. So Balaam's hedging his bets at this time. He's trying to get the best of both worlds, which is a lot like we do sometimes. We want to come to church, and yes, I go to church, and yes, I'm a great Christian, but I still don't want to let go of everything else because that's kind of fun too. So I want my hands in everything so that if one don't work out, I got the other one to fall back on. I kind of want as they say, I want to diversify. I want to diversify my religion. I want to diversify my personality. I want to diversify who I am so that I got a little bit of everything to keep me going. God wasn't having it. He said, we're not having that. So the incident with the donkey showed him who God truly was. And he continues on the trip, but he finds out. To finish up in verse 34, Balaam said to the angel, I have sinned. He figures it out. I've sinned. I got it. You ain't. Don't beat me like I did the donkey. He said, I got it. I'm the one that's wrong here. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. So if you are displeased, I'm going back. Whatever you say at this point, I'm cool with. I'm going back. But the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. And in a nutshell, it's not quite enough to do another whole lesson on it. But he goes with him, and it's pretty funny because Balak just about loses his mind because he finally gets the guy there. He's like, all right, curse him. And Balaam starts blessing him. He's like, no. That ain't what I got you here for. He said, try again. So he takes him around the other side of the mountain and says, now curse him. And he blesses him again. He's like, no. Come around the other side. Maybe you can see him better from over here. And he says, curse him. And he blesses him again. So Balak figures out, this ain't working. This guy ain't going to curse him. Because Balaam had now figured it out that to go against God wasn't going to work out very well for him. So even though he was presented with the mountain of gold, the mountain of silver, the palace, Balak goes crazy. He's like, I'll give you anything. You can be king, whatever you want. Just curse him so we can beat him. And Balaam won't do it. He refuses to go against God because at this point he's all in. He's bought into it. He realizes that God is more powerful than anything he was believing to start with. Does it always have to take an event like a donkey talking to us to get us back on the right road, to get us on the right path? What does it take? For those of y'all who are on the right road, that stay on the right road, you don't need an event. Why for a lot of us who seem to meander, kind of like the donkey did? Why does it sometimes takes God to, pop us in the back of the head and say, hey, stupid, get back on the road? I don't know. It does. And God usually will find a way to do it for us, to keep us on the right path.